Thank you. Well, thank you very much for coming. Once again, we have Howard with us. You know him, but I was encouraging Kelvin to introduce him properly because, and let me just say a little bit about what Kelvin was saying. Howard, when I first met him, was a member of the Kapora Smallholders Association, of the Kapora Smallholder Farmers Association, CASFA. A little while later, he was elected onto the board and became chair of that association. When we first met, there were 1,500 members. By the time Howard had been engaged and we've been working together, they had at one point 9,000 members. That was actually not such a good idea because the resources for training and teaching within a farmers association are limited. So you're now down to 5, down 2. But then after 2 spells as chair of CASFA, Howard was put onto the board of the National Association. And that's called NASFAM, the National Smallholder Farmers Association of Malawi. And they have 140,000 members. And Howard was then chosen as the vice chair of that group, and he served as vice chair for 6 years. In what I have no evidence to disprove, as it were, the fact that that is actually the largest, or certainly one of the largest, farmers associations in Africa. I mean, I ask all sorts of people who know about other parts of Africa, but nobody can top that. So it's a remarkable organization. We're very, very fortunate to have them as partners, because you can actually do something if you're organized. And the future, as they say, belongs to the organized. That's their slogan. And if you want to do anything with smallholder farmers, you have to have some kind of organization to work with. You can't just work with thousands of people who own 1.5 acres and who are just desperately concerned to look after their own patch and to try and grow enough to survive. They have to be organized. So this is what we're going to explore this morning, is how that works, how having a really good partner in Africa with an organized farmers association, and how having the opportunity to move around Scotland, meet people and get support both from importing the rice or exporting to us, and also from the contacts he's made. So that's my start. Howard, welcome again.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John.
Let me just start. When I first went to and met NASFAM, they had a little sheet they handed out with what a typical farmer was. And the typical farmer, a typical member of their association, was actually a woman. I mean, they have slightly more women members than they do men. And she had an acre and a half to farm. She might have been to primary school, but almost certainly not to secondary school. She might or might not have actually completed primary school. And she would have a hoe. And a hoe is not like the thing I weed my garden with, but it's a very long lump of wood with a big metal blade at the end of it, which you dig the fields with. So if you think of digging a couple of football pitches with that in the sun at about, what's the temperature?
32 to around 38 degrees.
You can see it's not that much joy. That was where we started. Howard, could you tell us something about your farm and how that looks What sort of implements?
First of all, let me thank all of you for sparing your time to come and listen to us. I don't take this for granted. And let me thank you, John, for enabling me all the time I come here to come and have prayers here. Thank you very much. It's like I'm part of this congregation. Yes, as John has said, I am a smallholder farmer. In Malawi, smallholder farmers do not own registered farms. We live in villages under village headman. There is a structure of leadership, local leadership in Malawi. We have the village headman, we have the group village headman, we have the chief, and then we have the paramount chiefs. These people are the people who are given constitutional powers to look after all Malawians in the villages. So every Malawian comes from a village, no matter what. Every Malawian comes from a village. So the advantage that we have is when the village headman allocates you land, there is no way that land can be taken away from you. It's your land, it's your children's land. So that's where all of us feel comfortable, because if you are allocated land, you are secured. And it's on that land where you are supposed to do all your agricultural activities for your survival. Most of smallholder farmers would have an average land of at least 1.5 to 2 acres. Not much, because it's what the village headman has been given to give to his people. So, what we have done, we are smallholder farmers from villages, so which means our land, we have land which is with very small boundaries, just to show that this land belongs to this one, this land belongs to this one. And our land is, we inherit the land of our parents. Like in my case, where I live is where my father used to live. So we live in extended families. I used to live with my father who passed away in 2017, but I still live with my father.
Your mother?
With my mother. I have 2 children, and my children have 4 children, so I have 4 grandchildren. But those who work on my farm, we are 6 who work on my farm. I also have a pair of oxen, an ox cart, the horse which John was just mentioning here. I also have animals, other birds like chicken, pigeons, because in Malawi we eat the pigeons. It's not like here where you just find them flying around in town, but in Malawi, pigeons belong to someone, because we have to build shelter for them to make sure they are safe. So we tame them and we eat them when we feel like. So we have pigeons. We also have, like in my case, I also have 2 dogs, but my dogs are not those dogs that stay in the house. They stay outside the house, and they give us quite a lot of security, especially during the night, because our animals, like if you have cows and goats, we just tie them outside. So most of the security that we depend on are the dogs. So on my land, I grow the Kilombero rice. The Kilombero rice is the cash crop. No matter what in our area, Kilombero is the cash crop. Then we also grow other varieties of rice. We also grow maize corn, cassava, groundnuts. We also have sugarcane, bananas, and like in my case, I have fruits like oranges, mangoes, guavas, pawpaws, just around my home. So, John, in short, that's what I have at home.
Yeah. So you've got a couple of oxen. You've got a hoe. You've got a plough.
Yes.
A plough and an ox cart.
Yes.
Is that it as far as your implements are concerned?
Yes, these are my farm implements that I have.
And I find that very interesting. We said a bit about the ox carts. But if you go to the Museum of Rural Life in East Kilbride, just about the first thing you see when you go in there is what's called a Scots cart, I think, or a Scotch cart even, but basically a two-wheeled cart which you could tip, which was the principal means of getting stuff around 130 years ago. And that's what drove a lot of the development then, and it's what's driving development in places like Karonga, because if you want to have animals, that you can bring the food in by cart. If you want to build things, you can bring the bricks in, and it's also you can earn money by just providing local freight services for your community. So and where do they come from?
Like the ox cart, and even one of my oxen came from. I have them because of the support that the support that exists between CASFA and True Origin. Why do I say so? Our partnership makes things easier for farmers. First, in the past, we did not have chance to bargain on the cost of our rice. But because of this partnership, because of bargaining, the cost of our rice has gone up. So because it has gone up, at least if you budget properly, you can manage to buy an ox cart after selling your rice. You can manage to buy an ox after selling your rice. But as for the ox cart, we got a grant from the Scottish government through our partners. The Scottish government gave us money to give farmers 50 ox carts. But we said, no, we cannot only give 50 farmers. What we do is we make it a revolving project so that more farmers benefit from it. And because instead of just having 50 farmers to benefit, now we can count on 195 farmers who have benefited from that project. So I'm one of the beneficiaries.
Yeah. So let me dig into that a little bit. I mean, we got money from grant from the Scottish Government, which allowed us to pay 50 ox carts. How did that turn into 190?
It's because what we did was, by then, an ox cart was costing around, was it?
About 500, I think.
That time it was about 150,000 Malawi kwacha. So what we were saying is, a farmer should bring half the payment. If you bring, no, we are saying a third of a payment, because farmers were paying 50,000, then we give them the ox cart. So it means CASFA was adding, it was like a subsidy, but in terms of installment. So if you give us 50 kwacha, we had contracted someone to make the ox carts, so he could make the ox carts, we give them to farmers, then when they harvest, they pay another 50 kwacha. The second harvest, they finish the payments. So when they repay the money, that money was also taken to go and make more ox carts. That's why we ended up having 195 instead of just 50.
So that's...
Huh?
How long does an ox cart
An ox cart in Malawi with proper care can last for over 20 years because it's something that do not need really serious repairs, no. Yeah.
And where do they, but yeah, and let me interject now because some of you may know this, but Margaret Mackay has been making some very generous donations for ox carts. So I think we will this year be providing something like 3 additional ox carts. The story there is nice. We were at the Bishop's, Gregor Duncan's house last time Howard was here, and Margaret was there, and we were talking about ox carts, and she said, "Oh, that's interesting. When my ancestors left Sutherland from Cromarty to go to Canada, they took with them an axle and 2 wheels. And after their terrible journey where they almost all died they were becalmed and the crew didn't have enough food, they arrived on the other side with this pair of wheels and an axle, and they made themselves an ox cart. And that enabled them to take their stuff to where they were going, and because everybody on the boat just about was called Mackay, to distinguish her family from everybody else, they were known as Ox Mackays. So Margaret's been writing to her family and collecting money from the family to support the Ox Cart Fund in Malawi. And that's actually typical of what happens when Howard goes around and you take him to meet people. Things happen, and people get really hooked, and they've been supporting in all sorts of ways. But that's a particularly nice St. Mary's story about ox carts. The most recent ones, where have they been made? Another part of the story.
My son makes the most recent ones. What happened was in 2013, when we were in Dumfries, I remember that was on our way from Wales.
Yeah, there were various rather hairy journeys to get on time to Dumfries, but...
Yeah, so we met in a meeting like this one. After the meeting, I had a maybe 15 minutes conversation with a man called Paul Field.
This was at St. John's, Dumfries, actually.
Yeah. So I not even understand how he got interested in what we were discussing, but we shared contacts and we remained in touch. So that was 2013. 2 years later, I had problems with a rotavator. Then I wrote him, Paul, I have problems with my rotavator. I wanted to come to your workshop if you can allow me and do some orientation on maintaining the rotavators. So it took him only a week to invite me to Scotland. So I came to Scotland. I was at his workshop. I stayed there for 3 weeks. At the end of the visit, we agreed that I set up a small rural workshop in Karong, in our place, in the village. So Paul decided to give me £2,000 so that I can go and buy tools at home. But I said, no, I'm just a poor person. If you give me the 2,000, when I get home, before I start using it on the tools, I'll get some money and prioritize other things. So I would request you remain with your money, buy tools and send me the tools. Yeah. So Paul was very surprised, but that's what was done. So that was in 2015, and in 2016, Paul sent out the first consignment of tools, and instead of sending us only tools for a welding workshop, he also sent us tools for carpentry workshop. So we had no ideas about carpentry because I've never done carpentry. But we found some carpenters and opened a carpentry workshop. So we have 2 workshops in one building. So while doing that, we met Alan of Dundee, who ships out the items to Malawi through containers. And Alan was also very interested in what we were doing in Malawi because he usually comes to Malawi. So he advised me to write a proposal and include the tools that we want. So when I just started writing the proposal, Alan met John of Sterling and he told John what we were doing in Malawi and what we agreed that I write a proposal. So we are very fortunate because John said, no, tell Howard, he should not write you a proposal, but he will provide what he needs. So we stopped writing the document to Dundee. Instead, the people of Sterling sent us a huge consignment of tools. But to our surprise, they added something that we did not expect all the same. They added sewing machines for tailoring. So instead of doing two things, we added tailoring. So that's where the idea of becoming a skills development center was born. 3 skills. We have all these children, all these troublemakers in the village because they have nothing to do. Why can't we bring them together so that we teach them the skills so that they have something to do? So we started planning for that, but the problem was if we bring all these children, all these youth together, they will be coming from different places. We need to keep them from around 7 o'clock to 3 o'clock. What are they going to eat? Fortunately, that's when we met Nick and John and Jane Riches. I'm happy we have their parents here so that they can hear what their children did in Malawi. So they came to our workshop. I told them the situation, so they did not take long. They responded by giving us enough money to take the children through the course. So we organized the 3 months training, and it went on very well because the children were being fed from the school. We had 60 of them, and they did very well, to the extent that we are now under pressure. Most of the people who have nothing to do are coming to us. They want to be trained in different skills.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can see how the web sort of grows, the network, and people come in. And we were in Dunfermline on, if I remember, it was Thursday, I think. And we were visiting St. Leonard's Primary School, which is not in the best area of Dunfermline, and very diverse population. But somehow, I mean, I don't know the answer to this, but somehow Howard, in the course of his trips, made friends with Dunfermline Athletic, as you do. Dunfermline Athletic arranged for 6 teachers from Dunfermline to go out to Karonga, which they did. And that really got them hooked. I mean, 2 wonderful, well, one was a teacher we met and one was a classroom assistant, but so enthusiastic and dealing with not an easy area at all. But we went round and they all knew about Howard, and we went from classroom to classroom, and they were very warm and sympathetic. They wanted to help with, they've now got a partnership with the school in Karonga, in the district, and they wanted to help them. You have to understand, primary schools in Malawi aren't well equipped. They have huge class sizes. Anyway, they wanted desks. So they did a sponsored walk from the school up to Dunfermline Athletic Football Ground, marched around the football ground, and raised £1,300, really from a very poor school. what happened to that?
With that money, they wanted us to make 20 desks for one class in a primary school. So I said, no, we cannot make 20 desks, but out of this, we should make 40 desks. So what I did was to tell the school that here is the money from the partners. What I will request you, you have all these big trees, you give me wood. You cut the wood, the planks, and give me, so that this money will be used to pay the people who are going to make the desks and to buy the metals. And we did that. The school has now 40 desks. Yeah.
And they were made in your workshops?
Yes, it's Roderick and his group who are making the desks. We don't need to go in town to make anything now because we can make them locally. We are trained, we have the equipment.
I just try and put this all in context, because it's an extraordinary story, not easily repeated, of course. But we think a lot about, what is fair trade and what does fair trade do and how can we make it more effective. And a lot of fair trade, of course, is providing markets. And that's what True Origin and in Paisley does. We import rice from Malawi. Last year, we imported 4 containers of rice. It's actually quite a lot when you see it in the warehouse, about 80 kilos. And we're selling a lot of that to the Central England Co-op, where Howard's been. So marketing is one thing, and it's quite a challenge, because it's not highly competitive on price. It's the best rice there is, but. So, but what else does a farmer need to go to be able to develop his business? Well, or her business. The first thing is finance. You can't grow a farm without money. If you want to plant crops, you've got to buy seed. And you need, if you want to scale it up, you're going to need implements and things. So finance is one of the problems. Technical know-how is important, and that means education. The association's really good because they have 4 field officers and they also train lead farmers, and that way farmers get as good education as anybody else I've met, or much better. Many cases, certainly in Eswatini, Swaziland, they're dependent on government services which are not regarded highly at all. And effectively, they just learn from their neighbours if they've got friendly neighbours. But this is organised. So finance, training, and implements, farm implements, technology. And it's very difficult, particularly difficult to get finance. If you try to borrow money, just go to somebody and say, look, we've got this lovely business importing rice from Malawi, and their eyes glaze over, and 20% they say, but we wouldn't give you it anyway. So that's very difficult. But in this case, we were lucky to get a grant from the Scottish government. I mean, I don't think we could get that anymore. I mean, there's a huge reluctance on the part of aid agencies, governments, and so on, actually to give subsidies, what they would regard as subsidies, to farmers. That's why I was saying in my sermon. It's just, you get business advice, but no, for heaven's sake, how could we give money to support farmers? That would be unfair competition from Monsanto. And that's the sort of drive. So we're lucky to get that, but a lot of the money that's coming in has been through, people in a primary school in Dunfermline doing a sponsored walk and getting the money in. And that's about the only way you will get it. I mean, we were lucky when we started True Origin. to get any kind of loans. It took about 3 years, and we went to Christian Aid, Oxfam, and eventually the government set up a social investment Scotland. So finance has come in informally, and it's coming in the form of tools, which second-hand tools and things, which you'd rather have spend a lot of money on. But that's it. And we've got this partner in Dundee who ships it out very cheap. So all of those things have happened through this growing network. And education has happened and implements. And that's why this has been able to grow. So the average farmer there now has certainly a plough, an oxen, ox carts, and that's made a huge difference to the prosperity of the farmers. And as they grow more prosperous, so they can buy from local businesses, as you provide training for people. It's a virtuous circle. It's a way of building a sustainable economy for these rural communities. We need to stop in a minute. I just want to get Howard to say one more thing about education, because I think this is also very important. If you remember, I was saying the average member 15 years ago would have had some primary education, not necessarily complete, but very rarely secondary education. How has that changed?
In terms of education, it has also changed, as I said at first, that because of true origin, farmers are able to get at least a fair price for the rice, which is enabling us to send most of our children to community-day secondary schools which are within our communities. But it is still difficult for us to send our children to government secondary schools, which are very expensive. But we have been lucky because of this partnership. Some of the children, very needy children, and the ones who are very lucky are orphans. Because of their intelligence, when we put them in secondary school through the money which comes from here, you find that they also qualify to go to university, which wouldn't have been happening without sponsoring them. And this partnership has produced graduates, and it still continues to have some youths who would have been roaming about in the village. We have them in universities now. And some of them are doing courses which are required to be done by very intelligent children in the country, like agricultural economics, accountancy, courses to deal with the sciences. We have 3 children from our community who are doing that. But apart from that, we have also some who have diplomas in accountancy. Some are doing nursing. I think one of the nurses met Jane Riches. Yeah. Some have degrees, Bachelor of Science in Agriculture and the like. All this to be done has been made possible because of this partnership. So there is that change because we have somewhere to lean.
Yeah. And I mean, thank you all very much for your support for the Fair Trade stall. We've managed to make, I think, since we started, we've had to, we had to pay for the stock, but when that's all paid for, in round figures, this last year, we've made about £1,000 thanks to all your generosity. I mean, that's because it's not just straight profit. People give us a bit extra when they're buying, which is very nice. But we're also able to buy wholesale prices now a bit more, so that helps. And then we've got all the rhubarb and the apples and things that people donate. So between all that, we have £1,000. And what we're thinking of doing with that, been talking to Howard, part of that £500 will go into, we haven't talked about this, but for another time really, to a fund for irrigation. Climate change is, the patterns of rainfall changing, the large periods of drought, and if you don't support the rice during that period, you'll lose it. So with a good solar pump and shallow wells, which you can dig because the groundwater is quite high, or you only have to go down about 12 feet, you can keep the rice going during the drought. So we'll put £500 of that into a drought fund, a solar panel fund, which True Origin Partnerships will run. And then the other 500 will split between ploughs and ox carts to keep that fund topped up and growing. So that's what all that at the back at church is producing, and I think we can do even a bit better than that next year, but we'll see how it goes. But so thank you all hugely for the kind of support you've given. It's all part of something bigger than this, and which is growing. But I think that is showing the way forward. That DFID had a sort of paper, which very interesting paper, about 2015 on agricultural development. Where are you going to go with all these smallholder farmers who are growing in number, but their farms are getting smaller, and that's not sustainable? And what they said was, some farmers you'll just have to help hang in. They're not going to make it. Others will develop their farms, and that's what's clearly been happening. And if you go around the farmyards, they look more like you would expect a farmyard to look in a children's picture book with animals and things running about. And then other people are going to have to step out, and they're going to have to develop new industries, new small businesses, and that's happening. So this paper was very prophetic of what was going to happen up in the north of Karonga. Whether it's happening much else, I don't know, because it is a remarkable organization. It has the strength as an organization to handle all this stuff. Without that, it wouldn't work. And there are not many others around. So, at least here is a seedling of hope. And Howard has been an enormous part of that. He has real vision. And the reason why, Paul Tofield down in Dumfries, after that meeting, came up and said to me, anything I can do for him, I will do, because he's committed and he's got vision. So we're really delighted to see you again, Howard. Thank you very much.
But I just wanted to say one or two things to this church. May I request you to support us. Next year, we want to have another training for the youth. So we will need some funds, especially when we bring these youth together, they need food. I'm just a volunteer. And when I'm doing this, I'm not sent by the community. I come here literally for the True Origin partnership between CASFA and Kaporo smallholder farmers. But I think I will be guilty conscious if I do not utilize the opportunities that I can see here to help to develop my community. The other thing that I would like to challenge you is, you people and us are like people in two different worlds. You throw away very good items, tools, electronics, because you have bought other new items. If you can have something like a challenge where we are telling you people who come to pray here that find a new home for your old items. In brackets you can put anything, so that they find a new home for those items in Malawi. Those items really make a huge difference in the community. If we are talking about Port Toffield in Dumfries, it's not always that Port Toffield sends to us brand new items, but what he does is to organize tools which were supposed to be thrown away, and they come to us, they make a difference. So please, this is my request to this congregation on two things. One, next year, probably around April, we'll want to organize another training for these youth, so we will need food to feed them. And please don't throw away what you think are old just because you bought a new thing. Give us. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Howard. Good. Thank you all very much.